Pick your side. Go on, pick it. Choose now. You can almost feel the pressure in those words, can't you? That little tightening in the chest. The sense that someone is standing in front of you, waiting for an answer, almost impatiently. Like if you don't answer quickly enough, something must be wrong with you. Pick your side. Are you with us or with them? It's such a familiar feeling that most of us don't even question it anymore. The moment something big happens in the world, a conflict, a crisis, an argument that spreads across headlines and social media, the first thing we're asked to do isn't understand it. It's choose. Choose quickly. Choose loudly. Choose clearly. Don't sit on the fence. You've heard that phrase before, haven't you? Don't sit on the fence. As if the fence itself is something shameful. As if the very act of pausing, watching, and trying to understand the whole landscape before stepping into it somehow makes a person weak. But here's the strange thing. Most of the time when the world demands that we pick a side, we don't even know the full story yet. We see fragments, headlines, clips, opinions, emotion. And before we've had time to breathe, the pressure begins. Pick a side. Stand somewhere. Declare yourself. Because apparently there are only two places you're allowed to stand. This side or that side. Right. Wrong. Us, them. And if you pause long enough to look around and say, hold on, maybe this situation is more complicated than that. Well, then suddenly people start looking at you differently. They say you're avoiding the issue. They say you're being neutral. They say you're sitting on the fence. But today I want to explore something with you, because that fence people talk about, the one they say you shouldn't sit on, I think something interesting might happen to it before the end of this video. It might break, not because the person sitting on it is weak, but because the world itself has become too complicated for a simple fence to hold. So stay with me for a little while, because I want to walk through something that has been shaping human behavior for thousands of years. The strange power of pick a side. Why humans feel the urge to divide the world into camps. Why the pressure to choose can feel so intense. And why sometimes the clearest view of what's really happening doesn't come from standing on either side at all. Sometimes it comes from stepping back far enough to see the entire landscape, not rushing, not reacting, just observing. And once you start seeing things from that place, something shifts. Because suddenly you realize something important. The world has been asking people to pick sides for a very long time. But that doesn't always mean the world is right. If you step back and look at how humans talk about big issues, something interesting starts to appear. We rarely describe the world in layers. We describe it in sides, two camps, two teams, two opposing lines drawn across the ground. And once those lines appear, everything begins to organize itself around them. People gather with the group that feels closest to them. Voices inside that group start repeating the same ideas. Emotions bounce back and forth between people who already agree with each other. Before long, the lines get thicker, louder, harder. And suddenly, the entire situation feels like a contest. But reality itself rarely begins that way. Reality begins messy. It begins with history, culture, mistakes, fear, pride, misunderstanding, power, survival, all tangled together in ways that don't fit neatly into two boxes. Yet somewhere along the way, our minds smooth all of that complexity down until it becomes something easier to hold. This side, that side. You can see it everywhere once you notice it. Arguments at a dinner table, debates online, entire nations talking about one another, as if each one is a single voice speaking in unison. But no country is one voice, no culture is one idea, and no conflict in human history has ever been as simple as two labels facing each other across a line. Still, the moment tension rises, our minds start looking for that line. Where is it? Which side is mine? Where do I stand? Part of that instinct runs very deep inside us. Long before cities existed, long before borders were drawn across maps, human beings lived in small tribes. Tiny communities scattered across forests and valleys and deserts. Survival depended on cooperation. People hunted together, protected one another, shared resources, raised children inside those groups. Belonging wasn't just emotional, it was survival. And when another tribe appeared on the horizon, things changed quickly. You needed to know who was with you. You needed to know who wasn't. Choosing sides in that kind of world made sense. It was a signal of loyalty, a way of saying, these are my people. If danger arrived, your tribe needed to know you were standing with them. That instinct hasn't disappeared. It's still sitting quietly inside the human nervous system. Even though the world around us has changed completely, Today, we don't live in scattered tribes under open skies. We live in a world connected by satellites and fiber cables and screens that bring every headline from every continent directly into our hands. But the ancient instinct is still there. The moment tension rises, the mind starts scanning for signals. Where is my tribe? Who agrees with me? Who stands against me? And once those signals start bouncing around between people, something powerful happens. Groups begin forming, not slowly, very quickly. Voices inside those groups repeat the same ideas back to each other. The more those ideas are repeated, the more solid they feel. Doubt gets pushed to the edges. Questions start sounding uncomfortable because questions slow things down. And when people feel urgency, slowing down feels dangerous. So the pressure returns. Pick a side. Choose now. Don't hesitate. And if you watch that process carefully, you'll notice something else happening underneath it. Emotion starts rising faster than understanding. Anger, fear, moral outrage. Sometimes those emotions are completely understandable. Human beings care deeply about justice and safety and protecting life. Those instincts are part of what makes our species compassionate. But emotion has a strange side effect. It speeds everything up. The stronger the emotion becomes, the harder it is to sit quietly with uncertainty. The mind wants resolution. It wants to land somewhere, even if the ground it lands on hasn't been fully examined yet. So people choose quickly. And once a choice is made, another psychological shift begins. The mind starts protecting the side it chose. Information that supports that side suddenly feels more convincing. Information that challenges it feels uncomfortable, sometimes even threatening. Not because people are unintelligent, but because the human brain was never designed to calmly process thousands of conflicting signals every day. It evolved to protect identity. And once a side becomes part of someone's identity, stepping away from it can feel like stepping away from belonging itself. Which brings us back to that fence again. The fence people talk about, the place where someone pauses instead of jumping into the crowd. For a long time, that position has been described as weakness. Don't sit on the fence, as if the person who waits is somehow avoiding responsibility. But what if that pause is actually something else entirely? What if it's the moment where understanding begins? Because if you stay there for a little while, just watching the landscape, something interesting starts to appear. You begin noticing how quickly people are pushed into corners, how entire conversations collapse into two options when the real situation has 100 moving pieces. You begin noticing how fast emotion spreads between groups, almost like weather moving across a valley. And you begin noticing something even more surprising. The loudest voices in a moment of conflict are rarely the ones trying to understand the whole picture. They're usually the ones trying to pull more people onto their side of the line. And once you see that pattern, the question slowly changes. Instead of asking, which side should I pick right now? Another question begins to form. What am I actually looking at? That question slows everything down. It opens space again, because now you're not reacting to the first wave of emotion that sweeps through the crowd. You're observing, watching, trying to understand the deeper currents moving underneath the surface. And from a psychological perspective, that shift is incredibly powerful. It moves a person out of automatic reaction and into awareness. But something even more interesting happens when we look at this from a spiritual perspective. Across many traditions, from ancient philosophy to modern contemplative practices, there is a recurring idea that human beings have two ways of engaging with the world. One way is immediate reaction. The other is observation. Reaction is fast. Observation is slower. Reaction pulls you directly into the emotional storm of a moment. Observation lets you see the storm forming before deciding whether to step into it. That doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent to the suffering that exists in the world. Far from it. It simply means allowing yourself enough space to see clearly before deciding how to respond. And clarity, real clarity, almost always appears in quieter moments than the world likes to give us. So when people say, don't sit on the fence, maybe what they're really reacting to is discomfort. Because someone who pauses to observe can see things that people inside the crowd sometimes miss. Patterns, contradictions, pieces of the story that haven't been spoken about yet. And that kind of perspective doesn't fit easily into two sides, which might explain why the fence feels so unstable. Not because it's weak, but because the situation itself is too complicated to balance on a single line. And eventually something has to give, usually the line itself. And when you stay with that idea for a moment, the idea of observation instead of immediate reaction, something else begins to come into focus. Because observation is not something humans are taught very often. We're taught how to respond. We're taught how to argue. We're taught how to defend our position. But very few people are ever shown how to simply watch what's unfolding without immediately stepping into it. Yet if you look back through different spiritual traditions, philosophy, even some branches of psychology, this quiet act of observing appears again and again. The idea that somewhere inside every human being there is a small space that can step back and look at what's happening. Not numb, not detached from compassion, just aware. Almost like standing on a hill above a busy city. Down below, the streets are loud. People are moving quickly. Cars are rushing through intersections. Lights are flashing. Sirens appear and disappear. But from the hill, you can see the whole pattern. You can see where the traffic is building. You can see where the roads intersect. You can see things that the drivers down in the streets cannot see because they're inside the movement. That quiet vantage point, inside the human mind, is something many people have forgotten exists. Not because it disappeared, but because modern life rarely leaves space for it. Everything arrives quickly now. News breaks within seconds. Opinions form within minutes. Arguments spread across entire platforms before most people have had time to take a single breath and ask themselves what they're actually looking at. And the more urgent everything feels, the harder it becomes to access that inner hilltop. Because urgency pushes us back toward the ancient tribal instinct. Choose quickly, choose loudly, stand with your people. But if you sit quietly for long enough, something else starts to happen. The emotional intensity that first rushed in begins to settle. Not disappear, just settle. And when it settles, space opens up. In that space, you might notice how many layers are involved in any human conflict. History stretching back decades or centuries. Cultural fears that have been carried through generations. Leaders making decisions. Ordinary people caught in situations they never chose. Pain moving through families. Loss, anger, protection, survival. All of it tangled together in ways that cannot possibly be reduced to two simple positions. And when you begin seeing those layers, something interesting happens inside the heart as well as the mind. It becomes harder to dehumanize anyone, because once complexity appears, the neat story of heroes and villains starts to dissolve. That doesn't mean injustice disappears. It doesn't mean suffering becomes acceptable. It simply means reality reveals itself to be far more intricate than the first wave of emotion suggested. And this is the moment where something very important can happen inside a person. Instead of being pushed into a corner by the crowd, they begin choosing their position from a place of understanding. Sometimes that still leads them to stand firmly for something they believe is right. But the difference is that the decision came from clarity rather than pressure. And clarity carries a very different energy. It's quieter, more grounded, less reactive. It doesn't need to shout as loudly because it isn't trying to convince itself. Which brings us back to that fence one last time. The place people are told not to sit. Maybe the fence was never meant to be a permanent place anyway. Maybe it's just a temporary place. A place where a person pauses long enough to see the field clearly before deciding where to walk. But if the fence breaks under the weight of the world's complexity, that might not be such a bad thing. Because when the fence disappears, something interesting happens. You're no longer trapped between two narrow lines. You're standing in an open field. And from that open space, you can move with far more awareness. You can choose where your compassion goes. You can choose where your attention goes. You can choose how your energy enters the world. Which brings me to something practical. Because when the world becomes loud and emotional, the human nervous system can easily become overwhelmed. You might feel tension in your chest, restlessness, a constant urge to check what's happening next. This is the moment when it helps to remember something very simple. You don't have to absorb every wave that passes through the world. You're allowed to step back. You're allowed to slow the moment down. You're allowed to say quietly to yourself, I'm going to understand before I react. That might mean taking a break from constant headlines. It might mean sitting outside for a few minutes and letting your body settle. It might mean having conversations that explore complexity instead of shouting across lines. Small things. But those small things create space. And inside that space, something powerful returns. Your ability to think clearly. Your ability to care without becoming consumed. Your ability to stay human in moments when the world feels like it's pulling people apart. Because at the end of the day, the goal was never to sit on a fence forever. The goal was simply to see clearly enough to walk your path with integrity, calm mind, open heart. and the quiet understanding that not every voice demanding an answer deserves your immediate reaction. Sometimes the most grounded thing a person can do is pause, observe, breathe, and then choose their next step with awareness instead of pressure. In a world constantly shouting, "Pick a side," that kind of calm clarity might be one of the most powerful things a human being can offer. And when enough people begin standing in that clarity, something shifts. The noise loses a little of its grip, compassion has more room to breathe, and the world becomes just a little easier to navigate for everyone walking through it. As always, this has been Valkyrie. Thanks for stopping by. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others. Lanterns up, people.